All right, it says we are live. So let me check a couple of things here. Looks like we got a few people already in this morning or in tonight, so that is awesome. So welcome everybody. There we go. There we go. Let me just check this, make sure audio is good. Perfect. Okay. We're live. We already got a comment. Mr. Larry Gill, hello. Just got back from a scouting trip in northern New Mexico. Found some great spots. Pumped. That's awesome. Sandy Spencer, sound is good. Welcome, everybody. Okay. So welcome. This is Wapiti Live Q&A just for you herd members. Only those of you that are part of the Patreon page, part of the herd there, can see this. So even though if you're watching on a computer, you're going to see YouTube on it. This is basically, it's an unlisted broadcast, which means only you guys can see this and only you guys can see the replay. So we do have quite a few new members. So if this is your first time joining us, welcome. If you are joining from a computer, you do have the chat on the side that you can go ahead and put your comments, questions, all that kind in, and it will pop up right on the side of the screen. I'll see it. If you are watching from your phone or a tablet, so down underneath, you'll see the little balloon icon. Just click on that. It will take you into a new screen. And from there, you can go ahead and type your question or comments. And then once you're done, you actually come back to the video. But welcome everybody. Here in Idaho, we are 25 days and a wake up away from opening day. So final prep has started. Just doing some knock tuning on my arrows with broadheads to make sure they're flying spot on. Double checking my marks with my broadheads and making sure all that is good too. And then of course started ordering in food to make my pack bags. So those of you that have followed me for a while, you know that I make gallon Ziploc bags that I have all of my food in. So for each day. And so basically all I have to do is grab one of those, throw a sandwich in, and I have all of my food right there each and every day. Nice thing is too, it gives something to kind of throw garbage in as well. So, all right, welcome to part 3 of the 10% Club. Now tonight we're going to talk about elk behavior, and we're going to dive deeper into kind of the different phases from now, really, kind of from now until end of November, and kind of what's going to be happening. So Joe Schultz catching my first live. Welcome. Downside to working evenings. Love all the information. Thanks much, Joe. Appreciate that. Welcome to your first live, and thanks for tuning in tonight. So, okay. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pull up this and share this. So this is probably what I have seen is kind of the best breakdown of the elk rut cycle. My buddy Mark over at Timberline Academy kind of created this, and I know in the past, we've talked about this same information, but now this gives you a graph that you can see that in my mind, like I said, this is one of the best rut cycle graphs that I've seen, because you can really physically see how everything, it's not somebody just talking about a bunch of dates, but really breaks it down a lot more. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go through each of those phases, and we're going to break it down, and we're going to talk about the elk's mindset and kind of where to expect to find the elk at each of those times. So because an elk's mindset is going to change, and his needs and his wants are going to change throughout each of those, and where you are going to find bulls are going to change between each of those as well. So All right, buckle up and let's go. So, okay, the reason I kind of chose this topic for right now because this is exactly where we are at. So, mid to late August, elk pre-rut. So, right now, those bulls are still in solitude. They're still in bachelor groups. The older bulls are. You will have spikes in younger bulls that are with cows. Really younger bulls. I mean, spikes or 2 points. They 1.5 year olds, maybe 2.5 year olds. Past that point, they are up in their bachelor groups and solitude. They are still in velvet. This is about the time right now that they start rubbing. The blood flow has been cut off to the velvet. They're starting to get hard-horned underneath, and it's time to start rubbing that velvet off because they are going to start here within the next week really starting to establish their pecking order. So, these bulls that have been living in harmony in bachelor groups all year long, it's now mano a mano. It's one-on-one. It's every elk for himself. And basically, they're establishing their pecking order. They're establishing their breed to right, or their right to breed. They're establishing, their dominance and who's the dominant bull in that area. Now, what's crazy is some of those bulls that are in high elevation right now, some of those dudes will travel up to 5 miles or more once kind of, towards the tail end of this pre-rut and it's time to really start rounding up cows. They will go a long ways, but don't want to jump into that quite yet. So yeah, if you're going out scouting now, and hard part is you're going to start seeing a lot more rubs right now too. And the tricky thing is was this a rub for a bull to get rid of his velvet, or was this a rub for him displaying aggression? And right now, it's more so to get the velvet off of the antlers. And if you find a really, really fresh rub, you're going to find strips of that velvet down at the base of the tree. That velvet, once it hits the ground, does not stay around long at all. A lot of the other forest creatures grab that stuff up in a hurry. So that's why sometimes, here in the next couple of weeks, you start finding rubs and you're not finding any of that fresh velvet. And I've had a lot of people sit there and say, well, I've never found velvet at the base of a tree. It's because, the other critters, squirrels, I mean, everything else out there in the forest know the value of that stripped velvet. So, from about, here in about 10 days, that 15th of August or so, towards, through the end of August, is basically where the bulls are going to head down to where the cows are hanging out, because cows and calves are at lower elevations. So mindset right now, everybody is starting to think about the rut. Not only just us, but the elk are as well. I don't know how many of you have noticed that the days are really getting shorter. I'm usually out the door at about 6:10 each morning. Definitely notice that mornings are getting darker, days are getting shorter, and it's that shortness. With those days shortening, that's what really starts to trigger all of this change. So now, obviously, we've talked about that the autumn equinox is what really triggers the rut, and we'll get into that once we get into the next phase. So elk pre-rut right now, they're still focusing on feeding, they're still focusing on packing on calories, especially dominant bulls, because dominant bulls know what is coming. So, and this is where sometimes, you're going to see a mix too, and it's going to vary a few days in your area, because you may hear from some people that are saying, man, in my area, bulls are already hard-horned. And, if you're out in your area and everything you're seeing is still in velvet, That's okay. Some areas get going a little sooner. And the areas that typically get started sooner are those areas with a higher bull to cow ratio. Meaning there's more bulls in that area because there's a higher level of competition. So they have to get going earlier. That means they're going to kind of cycle out of this pre-rut earlier into kind of waiting for that primary rut to go on. So they're going to be hard-horned earlier. They're going to be down rounding up cows earlier. And this is where some of you have heard me talk about when you're setting trail cameras during the summer and you're setting at different elevations. So if you have cameras at high elevation and all you're catching is bulls, for those of you that have a season that opens in mid-August, that's where you want to target. You want to target that higher elevation because you're really good chance you can still catch your bulls up in that higher elevation. They haven't left that summer range. They haven't left that higher elevation to head down and swoop up the cows. Now, once you start getting down to, late August, towards the end of August, season here in Idaho opens up August 30th. That's about the time that they start rounding up cows. You will have some bulls that will go round up cows earlier. So, but on the average, it's towards the tail end of August, first part of September, that those bulls are really down, rounding up their cows and getting ready for that peak rut, that primary rut. So the peak rut, like I said, we all know about the autumn equinox and in the 10 days. The autumn equinox is what triggers the rut, and that peak rut is going to happen within a 7 to 10 day window of that autumn equinox. Now, the reason I like this graph right here is because that blue, that primary rut, that peak rut, you can see how it can vary. So, okay, so now we're gonna kind of transition into, well, let me close out the pre-rut. So once bulls have gathered their cows, and this is where you can kind of see from about that September 8th, 9th until sometime September 15th or so, it's hard to find elk. You don't have a lot of bugling action. It's really, really quiet. And basically what's happened is those bulls have gathered up their cows, and now they're just staging. They're waiting for that first cow to come into estrus. And so there's not a lot of activity. That's the time frame where doing the breeding sequence as a blind calling setup can be really, really effective. So, one thing I forgot to talk about, that elk pre-rut. So from about the middle of August until about September 10th, let's say, that window. So August 15th to September 10th, if you're hunting anywhere in there, the inviting cow routine is a great sequence and one you want to focus on, because that's exactly what those bulls are looking for. They're looking for cows. They're looking to round up cows. That's their main focus. So matching your calling sequence with what's going on. So now September 13th to about October 2nd is that peak rut time frame. So in actuality, so if you think about this, September 22nd is the equinox. 10 days before that is September 12th. 10 days after that is October 2nd, which basically what that means is the peak rut can happen anywhere within that window. So, because you guys have heard me talk about the peak rut being triggered by the autumn equinox, that that 7 to 10 day window, the autumn equinox can be at the end of that, could be at the middle of it, or it could just be the start of it. So this graph right here really explains that really, really well, and gives you a good visual of that window of where the peak rut can happen. That is why within that window, and for me, I kind of say September 12th to October 2nd. My days are just a little bit different than what Mark put here, but for the most part, they're dead on. So September 12th to the end of September, first part of October, that October 2nd, October 3rd, the breeding sequence is great. That's when I switch and target my calling sequence with the breeding sequence at that time. So before that, before September 12th, I'm primarily focusing on the inviting cow routine. So I'm matching my sequence with what their mindset is and with what they're doing at that time of year. Okay? Now, early on, kind of September 12th to about the 20th, I'm not going to get real aggressive, crazy with the breeding sequence because older cows are what come in cycle earlier. And you don't have a bunch of them coming in cycle at that time. So again, you have to match your surroundings and understand what's going on. So your pace of your breeding sequence on that September 12th to about September 20th is a little bit slower. Okay? You're not really ramping up because you're not full peak rut yet. Now you could be. And the way you know is match your surroundings. Pay attention to what's going on around you. If you go into a canyon on September 14th and you've got 6, 7 bulls that are just screaming, and I mean they are screaming all morning long, you immediately know that you have a hot cow in that area. At that point, yes, you can raise the bar on the intensity of your breeding sequence. But if you don't hear that activity, you want to scale it back. Remember, match your surroundings. How much vocalizations are going on around you? Okay? Now, from about the 20th on through the end, this is where I switch gears again. And this is where I will turn up the intensity, because at this point you pretty much will be getting bulls answering back, and so locating. So at that point you're working targeted bulls. And what I mean by targeted bulls is you have a bull that has responded, you have him located, you're moving in within 150 yards of him, you're set up, and then you start in on the breeding sequence. And this is where you can ramp up the excitement. This is where you can get going heavier with your raking, your huffs, grunts, and whines, where you can add more emotion. But remember, you still want to follow the same principles where you start small and give yourself room to expand the breeding sequence. You don't just want to jump into it full tilt. You don't want to go from silence to full-blown all excitement breeding sequence. It just doesn't happen that way. You want to start it painting that picture slowly. So for those of you that are new, access on a computer, you'll see the tabs up top, hit the instructional videos, and there's instructional videos in there on the breeding sequence. So you'll see how I pace it. In fact, one of the videos I'm using an external reed bugle, and it is very early in the season, and you'll see that the pace I'm going, how slow I'm going. So, okay, so the 20th through that end of September, or we'll just say to October 2nd, October 3rd, you can really ramp up that excitement. Now, this also is during that midday time, that especially during full moon, that I'm going to focus on calling sequences as well. Now, you guys know during midday, I will still do the inviting cow routine. But during the peak rut time frame, that September 20th to August 2nd, August 3rd, I will do the breeding sequence during the middle of the day also. Just because that's not uncommon for that to be going on that time of year. So, it could be that, they went to bed, they laid down, working on the contents of their stomach. The bull gets up, starts cruising cows, and man, he catches pheromones of a cow that's just coming into estrus. Bang. It's on. He's going to be tending her. He's going to be right on. And that's basically the portrayal that you're doing during that midday. So again, you're not going to just jump right into it, both feet full tilt. You're going to work yourself into it. Okay. After the peak rut, we get into post rut or secondary rut on this one. October 2nd to, kind of end of October. So there will still be some secondary or post rut activity. And basically, there are cows that didn't get bred during the peak rut. They will fall in again 14 to 21 days later. So, if she came into estrus, let's say September 29th, didn't get bred, 14 to 21 days later is going to hit you right there in the middle of October. Or back it up a little bit more, September 20th. She didn't get bred, 14 to 21 days later, now you're at the first part of October. You do still have breeding activity going on, you still have rutting activity. The difference in the post-rut or secondary rut is that a majority of the mature bulls have already broken away from the herd and gone back up because they are very, very efficient with breeding their cows. So a lot of times this secondary rut or post-rut can be smaller bulls. And when I say smaller bulls, they can still be 6 points. They can still be over the 300-inch mark. But generally those good, big, mature bulls, certainly by October 15th, they've broken away from the herd and they're back into solitude. And when they go into solitude, they go into thickets because they don't want anything bothering them. And they get into these thickets where they don't have to move that far for food, shelter, or water because now it's time for them to recover. Maybe they got an injury during the rut. They lose a ton of weight and fat reserve during the rut. So they really have to focus and really pack that body fat and weight back on so that they can survive the winter. So calling sequences in the secondary or post-rut, breeding sequence will work. I tend to more play on the maternal instincts of cows, and I will use lost calf. So this year, Liz, my girlfriend, she has a rifle tag that I think is October 23rd to November 3rd. So, that's really at that tail end of secondary rut. I mean, there's not a lot of rut activity going on. So that's where I'm going to focus more on the lost calf, that lost distressed calf, play on the maternal instincts of the cows. But on the flip side, you will get bulls that respond to that lost calf. And they may not respond with bugles, but they will respond by coming to you. Because mature bulls will hear that, especially during the rut time, and they don't know if it's a young immature bull that's harassing a young calf, a young cow that's trying to breed her. She's too young, and they want to protect that calf. So, okay, and then late season, they're just staging. Some of them may start transitioning to their winter grounds. And so at this point, they're just going to be feeding. So your food sources are your focus at this point. You can do some calling. It's going to be cow sounds. And do cow sounds, kind of the inviting cow sounds that you're asking for a response. You're asking for an action, asking them for it to come. Sandy Spencer, sorry. Did you do the Onyx 3D video? You know what, Sandy? No, I completely forgot. I apologize. Life is absolutely hectic right now with lessons and work and trying to get ready for season. I will make myself a note and get that done. So, in fact, let me do a note right now. Thank you for reminding me on X. 3D video. Okay, there. Guys, thank you for keeping me in check. So, not letting things slide. So I know I was excited to do that, and life and everything else, and kids, girlfriends, jobs, and all kinds of stuff. Okay, so yeah, close out that late season, and then we got some questions coming in, and we'll hit questions. So if you guys have questions in, get them in right now because I'm going to dive into these questions. So that late season cow sounds, inviting, your assembly mew, your lost excited mew, your regathering mew, those things that are asking for a response or an action. Those are what you want to focus on. So, Jeff, what portion of the rut do the bulls most frequently use wallows? So the wallows really are up towards that front part, that elk pre-rut, kind of at the start of primary rut. Once really get into that middle of September on, they don't use wallows as much for a few reasons. Wallows are used for a couple of different things. One, it's used to get mud on them, cool them off, keep the biting flies off of them, but also two, to stink things up. You will sometimes find bulls towards kind of the tail end. That 25th time frame. I really haven't seen too many at the end of September still using the rut. More so I see those wallows kind of towards that end of August, beginning of September time frame is generally when I see them in my area. Now again, one thing to remember is, you are going to have some variations from area to area. And you know what goes on in one person's area, again, every year, right at the start of archery season, you will see the post on social media. Man, went out hunting this weekend, didn't hear anything, anybody hearing any bugles. And you have those guys that jump in here like, oh my gosh, they were screaming in my area. They were just on fire. And you kind of sit there and you almost wonder, are they really? They could be. So, I mean, I've talked to individuals that, I know that, we have really good bugling action at the start and they didn't hear anything and vice versa. And it kind of changes from, year to year. Some years you have really good bugling action early, other years not so much. And typically what I have seen, if you have good bugling action early on, that autumn equinox is going to fall in the middle of the peak rut. If you don't have good bugling action at the start of September, generally that autumn equinox is the start of the peak rut. So, and in fact, that just reminded me of something. So, for those of you that follow me on Instagram or Facebook, you've seen some posts lately about Hunt League. So I want to talk about Hunt League real quick. I was introduced to this last week. So Hunt League is an app, and right now it's only available for iPhone. The thing I really like about it, for those of you that have followed me for a while, early on in my career, I took a spiral ring notebook and I journaled. At the end of each day, I sat down and I wrote. I wrote the date on the top of the page, what the temperature was, what the weather was, what activity I saw, what I did, what responses, all that kind of stuff. Hunt League allows you to do that same thing. And it's got some really cool features in it that, you can hit the go button and you can choose whether you're on a scout or you're on a hunt, and then that just starts the clock. And you do not need cell service. This will work in airplane mode. So, but let's say I'm out on a hunt, and you can use this with your OnX. So I have my tracks turned on my OnX, and I'm making loops. But then I come across wallows or encounters, and let's say I find a wallow. So I drop a pin on OnX, I make a note real quick in Hunt League, but then I decide to bugle from there, and I get a response. Well, you can add those notes in Hunt League that I bugled, the bull bugled, I bugled, the bull bugled, and you can put notes in about that encounter. You can put notes in about what kind of bugle you did, what kind of bugle he responded with, what sound you did back. And so you can document that whole thing. And you can do that throughout your day. And then the cool thing is then when you get back home, you can export your tracks from Onyx and drop your tracks right into this scout or hunt on Huntly, and then you have all those notes and encounters that you took, but you also have the tracks from Onyx. And so now you're getting this aerial view, and it's a way to journal and document your hunt so that you can go back. Now, the reason I think this is really cool is because now when you're out there in the field, you have access to those hunts. You have access to those scouts. You get into a situation or something happens, jump back and read your notes. You have it right there at your fingertips. Now, Jared, the developer of the app, he and I talked a couple of days ago, and one thing that we're going to do for 2022 is you Elk Calling Academy members are going to be given a code. And there is going to be an Elk Calling Academy league within this app, and you have to be a member of the herd here to get this code. And that code is going to give you access to my scouting journals and my hunt journals on the app. So you're going to be able to see exactly everything I'm marking when I'm scouting and everything that I'm marking while I'm out hunting. So you're going to be able to look at those just like you're right there with me. So we still have some details to work out, but that's coming in 2022 for you guys as just another tool to get more information to you. So, all right. So, I got some questions. Jim, howdy. I have a cow tag, so how soft should I start with the lost cow or lost calf call? Okay, Jim, you don't want to be soft when you're doing lost cow or lost calf, because the lost cow, lost calf is a sound that has projection, it has emotion, it has panic. So it's not a soft call. It is a call that reaches out. And in fact, as always right there, Jim's just jumping right in on segueing, because tonight I'm not going to focus on an elk sound. I'm going to focus on a tip. And the tip is actually going to focus on that specific thing right there. So we'll jump into that. Got some more questions. Joe, around September 10th in the transition between pre-rut and primary rut with typical weather conditions, where would you look first and what type of calling would you start with? Joe, great question. Let me get back over onto this map or onto the elk rut cycle. So, okay, September 10th, that transition time, okay? So we know towards the tail end of the pre-rut that the bulls are down rounding up cows. Once they have the cows rounded up, then they are on their way to their rutting areas. And you'll know their rutting areas because there's old rubs, there's old wallows, there is rut activity in there on your scouting trips. So basically, September 10th, I'm going to cover ground at this time because you're still going to have some bulls hanging out down low where the cows are, and then you're going to have other bulls that are already up in their rutting areas. So rutting areas are typically secluded areas, box canyons, basins, benches, different places like that. And for some elk in some areas, it's not much of a difference from where they are. So that's why I said things are going to be a little bit different from area to area. But if you hunt an area that has really good elevation change, 10, 11,000 foot peaks down to, 5,000 foot meadows, those are the areas where you're going to have that transition, where you're going to have that the bulls leave in the high country down to get the cows, and then back way up. I've had some rut areas that are 3,500 feet. I've had some that are 9,500, 9,600 feet. A lot of the guys that I talk to and kind of keep in contact with, we've been talking quite a bit. A lot of the elk that we're finding this year are really up high, which the abnormally warm weather we're having, it doesn't surprise me that are up higher. I mean, guys are finding elk at 10,000 feet, 9,500 feet. So, but typically, I look for rutting areas in that 76 to 8,000, roughly right in there, feet elevation. Again, it depends on where you're at and where your elevation. I know we've had a couple of elk calling academy students that live over on the west coast, and they don't really have 200 feet in elevation change from the bottom of the floor to the top of the mountain where they're at. So those typically are elk. When you typically have lower elevation changes like that, the elk stay where they are all year round because they really don't get the harsh winters that change them out. So, all right, Joe, I'll be between 8,500 and 12,500, base camp at 95. Depending on the area that you're at, Joe, they're not going to be up at 12,500. That's pretty dang high up there for the rut. They're probably going to be more, probably in your area, 75 to 85 is kind of what I'm guessing. September 10th, you may still find some down around the 6,000 feet range. So if you do have some good high mountain meadows up there that really have a lot of grasses, those could be at that 8,000 or 8,500 feet. Your cows could be hanging out there. So typically what I tell people, I'm not sure if this is a new area for you, but I tell people if you're going into a new area, work the mountain. Work high, mid, and low. Find the tracks, read the sign, follow the sign. So, Sandy, I had an elk in a wallow at 8:15, just trying to cool off. That was 2 weeks ago. Yeah, they'll go in and lay in the mud, especially with the heat that we've had. Heck yes, and I know a couple of trips that we took. Haven't even been up the mountains in 2 weeks now, but last time I was up there, deer flies up at the mountain were pretty dang bad. They were hitting us pretty hard. So, okay. Oh, another comment question. Did I miss it? Hold on. 1, 2, 3. Nope, got it. Okay. All right, so we're going to move into the sound portion because elk calling academy, Mr. Larry gotta cover a sound or something having to do with calling. So while I'm doing this, if you have any other questions on the elk rut cycle or anything that we've talked about tonight, get those in. So okay, tonight, like I said, I want to talk about more of a calling tip, and in fact, the question about the lost cow, lost calf was great. So because it ties in with what exactly I want to talk about tonight. And what I want to talk about, the calling tip is let the reed do the work. And what I mean by that is we have a tendency that when we want to add emotion into our calling, we really hammer the reed. And if you hear the reed get this chattery note, it's not clean, or maybe it just stalls out on you, you're putting excessive pressure on that reed, and it's actually doing the opposite because it's not getting you that good projection, that good emotion that you want. So that's why it's key to stay nice and relaxed. Use the pressure of your diaphragm as your volume control to force that air up. But that's where something like a game changer or your grunt tube to project that sound works better, because you're still staying nice and relaxed on the reed. You're getting good, clean notes. You're getting good convey of the message that you're trying to put out there. But by using the game changer or the grunt tube to broadcast the sound, that's what allows you to get that higher emotion on it. So, camera is not on, really? So Larry's saying camera. Could you guys not see the elk rut cycle? Because I kind of put that back on there just so you guys could kind of see that while I was talking about some things. So let me know if you guys were seeing that elk rut cycle, and you should be seeing me now. So I mean, we've got really, really good connections. Nothing's wavering on it. So okay. So what I mean is, so this is a single light read. Very, very soft. But if I try to amplify, see how it cuts out? Because I'm really stressing this single latex. But now if you take something like the Game Changer, you can get that emotion and that amplification on there and get that emotion out. You're on now. Oh, whoops. Camera is not on. There you are. Rut chart is gone now. Yes, could see the cycle, and now you. Okay. Yeah, Larry, I was actually just putting that rut cycle up there more because it was kind of talking about Joe's question on that time frame, and also give you guys another chance just to kind of study that rut cycle a little bit more. So, same thing with the grunt tube. The grunt tube is going to do the same thing as the Game Changer. It's going to allow you to project that tone, and that's what you want to do, is stay nice and relaxed. Now the opposite, or the same thing happens when you're bugling, is a lot of people think that, man, I got to get volume. And so they put all this extra stress on the reed with tongue pressure, and that's where your notes cut out. It just, again, it has the opposite effect. You don't get the volume because that note's not nice and clean. We're staying nice and relaxed with your tongue pressure on that reed and using the diaphragm with air pressure and the grunt tube. That's what gives you that projection. That's what allows you to cover ground with your calls and sounds. So, all right, so there's your tip. Let the reed do the work. You're almost playing the reed like you're playing an instrument. If you're forcing it, then maybe you want to go from a single light latex, maybe you want to go to a double. And that's your locate reed. That's your reed that you can get really aggressive on, you can get really hard on it, and is going to be able to stand up to that kind of pressure to get you that locate to reach out to get you your volume. All right, so last chance for questions, double check. So, okay, told you about the Huntley, and so right now too, if you do download the Hunt League right now, there is a league that you can join. It's the Content Creators League. There was a few of us content creators. You have myself, you have Joe Gillia from Elk Bros, Guy from Western Contours, Garrett Weaver from On Point with Garrett, Jim Huntsman, and a few others. And so what we're doing is we kind of have a friendly competition going where we're tracking our scouts and our hunts, and you guys can follow along. And you can join the league and you can upload your stuff because there are prizes. So Velvet Antler Technologies is sponsoring this league. They have some prizes for giveaway. Sheep Feet actually just came on board as a sponsor. So it's a good opportunity to jump in and follow some of your favorite content creators that you guys follow or listen to, or podcasters. Follow along on the hunt. Have fun. In fact, Garrett Weaver just took the lead. Fall bear just opened up in Oregon, and he dumped a bear on opening morning, so he's out the gate. I haven't even been scouting yet, so I'll be posting some scouting trips this weekend. So Jim, so good idea to mix up the lost calls with a tube. Absolutely. And in fact, Jim, whenever I do, 90% of the time when I do lost excited mews, I'm going to do it through a tube or the Game Changer, just because I want that projection. So, okay, or you can take your hand, hold your hand up, something that's just going to help project that a little bit. So, all right, guys, well, that is all that I have for you tonight. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you got some information out of the elk rut cycle. Hopefully that was helpful to you. Have an Android, maybe Huntley will. Yes, Larry. Jared was hoping to have the app ready for Android this year, but something happened with the developer. So he actually is working on getting it available for Android soon. So I will announce when that is available for everybody. But yeah, it's just going to be a great tube or great tool to add into everything. So. All right, guys, we're going to wrap. Oh, another comment popped in. You guys are awesome tonight. Great, thanks. Okay. So, all right, we are going to wrap this up tonight, guys. So, again, hopefully that able to see that elk rut cycle help kind of break things down and understand them a little bit better for you. And appreciate all the questions. Oh, hold on. Joe, I was given a brand new dual call elk bugle tube that has split chambers and a built-in reed. Have you had any experience with their call? Joe, I have played with it a little bit, and I have heard it out there. It can be kind of a struggle to run. If you're looking for an external reed bugle, there are others out there that are easier. And in fact, I'll show this to you guys. This is the new Phelps metal tube with their mouthpiece. This mouthpiece is one of the easiest to operate. The neat thing is too is the frames. Any of their diaphragm reeds, you can basically take the tape off and pop that frame in there. Very, very easy tube to operate, and the one thing on this is less is more. It doesn't take much pressure at all. So you want to be very nice and relaxed on this. So if you are looking for a grunt tube with a mouthpiece on it, it's very, very easy to use. I highly recommend this Phelps. This weekend I will be recording the 2021 Grunt Tube Challenge, so that video will be on the YouTube page soon. So, all right, guys, we're going to sign off. As always, keep calling, keep practicing. Most importantly, though, have fun, and we'll see you guys on 2 weeks on the next Wapiti Live Q&A, where we will kind of continue that 10% club and get you guys ready for season. All right, guys, appreciate it. Have a good one.